Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going to tackle something, something really interesting.
Yeah.
It's something that's so woven into our lives that we rarely stop to think about it,
Mm-hmm.
and that's writing.
Yeah.
So, you, our listener, you pointed us to the Wikipedia page on writing
Okay.
as our starting point for this deep dive. And I think our goal here is to unearth the most fascinating and crucial aspects of this massive subject.
Absolutely.
And we want to give you a clear and engaging understanding of where writing came from and how it shapes our world today,
Yes.
all without getting lost in the details.
Right. Exactly. We don't want to bore people with the minutia
Hmm.
of,
Right.
grammar and things like that.
Exactly. So what's really captivating about this from the outset is this fundamental human impulse that gave rise to writing in the first place.
Yeah.
It's this inherent need, right?
It is. It's deep-seated
That's
to
what-
make our language endure,
Mhm.
to create a representation that can travel across distances and last through time. Well, and even before writing, that's what humans were trying to do, right?
Right.
With cave paintings and different ways to communicate,
Yeah.
to transcend their current.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah. So, okay, let's get into that core idea here. Our source, the Wikipedia page, defines writing as creating a persistent representation
Hmm.
of human language. Okay.
Mhm.
So these representations use symbols and rules. We call that a writing system
Yes.
to capture vocabulary and grammar, the lexicon and syntax of spoken language.
Right.
But it's also interesting that written language can take on a life of its own, right?
Yes.
Developing characteristics that go beyond just mirroring speech.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're right. When you say that a writing system acts as a vehicle for spoken language,
Yeah.
it does. That's essentially what it does,
Yeah.
right? It enables that widespread communication and that long-term preservation.
Yeah.
But it's important to note that those systems aren't languages in themselves. Oh, interesting.
They're tools to represent language,
Oh,
right?
okay.
Yeah. And you're right that written form can kind of develop its own conventions,
Mm-hmm.
its own style,
Yes.
which might not reflect
Yeah.
perfectly how we speak every day.
Right. I don't know. I guess poetry or something like that would be
Yeah.
a good example.
Or even just academic writing, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
The way we write academic papers is not the way we talk to our friends.
Right. Right.
It's much more formal.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not just about the marks on the surface, though, right?
Yeah.
The act of writing involves a whole range of cognitive and social processes.
Absolutely.
It's like tapping into our neuropsychological and physical abilities.
Yeah. Just think about the process, right?
Yeah.
From that initial thought in your mind
Yeah.
to moving your hand
Yeah.
or moving your fingers to type.
Right.
It's a very complex process.
It is.
Yeah.
And the result of this is the text, right? Whether it's etched in stone
Mhm.
or printed on paper or stored as digital data like what we're doing right now,
Jigsaw, yeah.
it only becomes really, truly active when a reader interprets those symbols.
Right.
And of course, this ties directly into your interest in gaining knowledge efficiently and thoroughly.
Yeah.
Because writing is, in essence, just a technology for information transfer.
It is. It is a very, very powerful technology
Yeah.
when you think about it.
Yeah.
Because if we connect that back to the bigger picture,
Yeah.
the power of writing really lies in its ability to complement
Yeah.
and extend spoken language
Yeah.
in crucial ways.
Right.
So, for example, speech, as you know, is fleeting.
Yes.
Disappears the moment it's spoken.
Boof. Gone.
Right. But writing offers that permanence.
Exactly. Yeah.
It offers that lasting form that can be transmitted
Mm.
across continents
Yeah.
or be preserved for centuries
Yeah.
in archives and libraries.
This is what I think is really interesting for me, is thinking about how writing actually changes
Yeah.
how we think. This source points out how writing allows us to externalize our thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
So think about that for a second. Our internal monologue suddenly made visible.
Yeah.
And by making those thoughts tangible, we gain the ability to reflect on them, to expand on them, to re-examine them, and
Yeah.
even completely revise our ideas.
Yeah.
It's like giving our brains an external workspace to experiment on.
I love that.
I know, it's such a great analogy.
It's a real aha moment for me.
It is, yeah. It really is.
It is. And I think that when we commit thoughts to writing,
Mm.
it is a whole new level of clarity and depth to our understanding.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're forced to structure your ideas in a coherent way
Yes.
when you're writing something out.
Mm-hmm.
And when you do that, you uncover gaps.
Yeah.
You uncover inconsistencies that you might not have noticed otherwise.
Right.
And it demands a precision and organization that spontaneous speech doesn't.
Right.
So, yeah,
Yeah.
I think you're right. That is a really key element of writing.
Now, let's think about the tools and materials,
Okay.
because it's an incredible journey from, scratching in the dirt to sophisticated digital devices.
Right.
The Wikipedia entry lists this vast array of tools: fingers, styluses, quills, ink brushes, pencils, pens, all sorts of printing methods.
Mm-hmm.
And the surfaces, stone, clay, bamboo, papyrus, wax tablets, right up to paper and digital screens.
Wow. It's amazing to think about.
I know.
Yeah.
It even mentions the Inca's klipu,
Oh, yeah?
those knotted strings that were used for record keeping.
Yeah.
That's like a truly unique form of writing, isn't it?
That's fascinating.
It is.
Yeah.
So, considering this evolution of tools, what do you think the most significant shift was in how writing impacted either society or individual thought with a particular technology?
Oh, that's a great question. I think that you have to go back to the development of movable type and the printing press,
Okay.
because that was a truly transformative
Yeah.
moment.
Yeah.
Because suddenly, the ability to reproduce written material rapidly and in large quantities
Mm-hmm.
democratized access to information
Yeah.
in a way that simply wasn't possible before.
Yeah.
And this had huge impacts on everything.
Yeah.
Religious reform, scientific progress, the spread of literacy.
Right.
It moved knowledge from just a few to a much wider audience.
Yes.
And I think that was hugely significant.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's also remarkable how the older and newer technologies kind of exist side by side.
Yeah, they do. Absolutely.
You might jot down a quick reminder with a pen on a sticky note, but then draft a very detailed email on a laptop, maybe even using voice-to-text software.
Yeah, and sometimes I find myself doing both in the same day.
I know, me too.
Yeah.
So this adaptability really speaks to the enduring human need for written communication, doesn't it?
It does. It really does.
Regardless of the specific tools we have at our disposal.
Yeah. And it's interesting to think about what initially propelled this development.
Yes.
The source talks about the collective motivations,
Mm-hmm.
those practical needs that arose as societies became more complex.
Right.
So things like keeping track of resources, documenting history, preserving cultural traditions,
Yeah.
codifying knowledge. Think of ancient legal codes
Yeah.
or early maps,
Okay.
and then organizing government through laws
Yeah.
and census data
Yeah.
and facilitating trade, like with contracts and agreements.
Right.
It was all about creating systems that were more reliable than human memory alone could be.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And there's this really powerful quote from Bazerman that I think underscores this point.
Yeah.
So he says that the increasing portability and speed of written signs have enabled increasingly coordinated action and memory across larger groups over time and space.
Wow.
And then the example of 4th millennium BC Mesopotamia, where the sheer volume of trade transactions exceeded what could be reliably memorized. I think that perfectly illustrates this point.
Yeah. Writing became the essential technology
Yeah.
for managing that complexity. Absolutely.
It wasn't solely about societal needs, was it?
No, not at all.
There were also significant individual motivations
Right.
driving the development and use of writing.
Yes.
So think about personal memory aids.
Yeah.
Everyone's make a shopping list.
Absolutely. Or a to-do list.
Right.
Yes. I know I do.
Okay, yeah.
All the time.
Or disseminating personal ideas through essays or political pamphlets, right?
Okay.
The sheer creative joy of storytelling,
Ah, yes.
maintaining personal connections through letters,
Yeah.
conducting business correspondence, or even documenting our own lives and experiences in diaries and journals.
Right. Those personal reflections.
Right.
Yeah.
And then look at where we are today. This explosion of digital communication, emails, social media, text messages.
Right.
That's made writing even more central to our daily lives.
Yeah, it really has.
And it's kind of blurring the lines
Yeah.
between those older
Uh-huh.
and newer forms.
It has. Yeah. Because,
Yeah.
it's no longer just the domain
Yeah.
of professional writers.
Right.
Yeah.
And the source rightly emphasizes just how pervasive writing has
Right.
become. It has extended
Yeah.
far beyond those writing-intensive professions.
Yeah.
So consider like business and finance.
Okay.
So a typical day for a wholesaler might involve responding to written inquiries, generating work orders, reviewing purchase agreements, sending emails confirming shipments, issuing invoices, requesting signed proof of delivery.
Wow.
So modern finance, banking, the entire regulatory framework.
Yeah.
All of that fundamentally relies on written documents, doesn't it?
It does.
Whether they're physical contracts or digital records.
And it's interesting how much of it's digital now.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So then you have governance and law.
Okay.
So written constitutions form the very foundation of so many modern states. And the operational procedures of governments at all levels are typically defined by written rules and regulations, right? And government agencies generate countless reports and documents.
They do?
Think about the sheer amount of written records that governments maintain about their citizens. Identity documents, records of births, deaths, marriages, property ownership, legal proceedings, and tax information.
Right.
It's an enormous interconnected system
Yes.
built on writing, isn't it?
Yeah. And very few people realize the extent of it.
Yeah, I know.
Until, they have to deal with it.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So what about science and scholarship?
Oh, well, huge, right?
I know.
Yeah.
The entire edifice of scientific knowledge rests on the meticulous recording and dissemination of research findings through written articles and books. So hypotheses are articulated in writing, experiments are documented in detail, data is presented in written and visual forms.
Yes.
Even securing funding for research
Yeah.
often hinges on the ability to craft compelling written grant proposals.
Yes. Very important.
Right. And then before research reaches the wider scientific community, it undergoes peer review.
Yes.
This is a process that is entirely dependent on written feedback.
Absolutely.
The gradual accumulation and codification of knowledge happens through citations and the integration of findings into broader academic works.
Right.
So it all comes down to writing again.
Yeah. It all comes back
Yeah.
to writing.
Right.
Yeah.
So journalism, of course, is another field deeply intertwined
Right.
with writing.
Absolutely.
News reporting
Right.
plays a vital role in keeping citizens informed about a wide range of issues,
Yes.
from local events to international affairs, covering culture, sports, and entertainment.
Right.
So the source acknowledges the significant changes and challenges facing journalism in the digital age. But the fundamental act of writing to inform the public, I think that remains absolutely central, doesn't it?
It does. It really does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look, let's not overlook education, because formal schooling is really the primary context in which most individuals learn to read and write. From the textbooks we study, to the exams we take, from the essays we compose, to the notes we jot down in lectures. Writing is both a subject of study in its own right and this indispensable tool for learning across virtually all academic disciplines.
Right. So it's both the subject and the tool.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
I know. Okay, so it's clear that writing is absolutely fundamental, but now let's like delve into this world of writing systems themselves.
Okay, so the nuts and bolts.
Yeah, like the mechanics. So our source provides this broad classification based on what units of language are being represented. So we have alphabets and syllabaries, which generally represent sounds.
Okay, so individual sound units called phonemes.
Yeah.
Larger sound
Yeah.
units called syllables.
Okay.
And then we have logographies, which represent units of meaning, such as entire words or meaningful parts of words, called morphemes. So yeah, we've got sound and meaning
Okay.
and various ways of representing both.
So what's really remarkable, I think, is the sheer variety of these ingenious approaches that humans have developed to visually encode language.
Yeah, that's true.
So let's start with logographies.
Okay.
So these systems utilize logograms where a single written symbol represents a whole word
Right.
or a meaningful part of a word.
So like, for example, in the ancient Mayan script, right?
Yeah.
The glyph that represented the word fish also represented the syllable ka.
Oh, wow.
Right.
So that's really interesting. So
Yeah.
Chinese characters are like the most prominent logographic system in use today, right?
They are.
They're used across languages and dialects in China, Japan, and to some extent Korea.
Yeah.
And we also find logographic elements in ancient writing systems like cuneiform in the Mayan script.
Absolutely.
Then we have syllabaries,
Right.
where each symbol corresponds to a syllable. So typically like a consonant followed by a vowel, or sometimes just a vowel.
Okay.
It's important to note that syllables that sound similar
Yeah.
might be represented by completely different symbols in a syllabary.
Okay.
Right.
Interesting.
So the source mentions Japanese as a language that's particularly well suited to a syllabary due to its relatively simple syllable structure.
Right.
And other examples would include Mycenaean Greek Linear B and the Cherokee syllabary.
Okay.
Yeah, fascinating. Yeah.
So, and finally, we come to alphabets.
Right.
So where individual symbols represent individual consonants and vowels,
Okay.
which are the smallest units of sound that distinguish one word from another.
Right.
And we call this phones.
Phones, yeah.
So
yeah.
the ideal
Yeah.
would be this perfectly phonological alphabet.
Yeah.
Where there's this one-to-one correspondence
Yeah.
between each sound
Yeah.
and each letter,
Right.
making spelling and pronunciation completely predictable.
So easy.
Yeah.
But in practice, real-world alphabets
Okay.
often deviate from this ideal, don't they?
They do, yeah. Unfortunately, due to the natural evolution of language and the borrowing of writing systems from other languages.
Yeah. It gets messy.
It does. It gets messy.
It does.
Yeah.
Within the category of alphabets, we have these interesting variations, right?
Okay.
So there are abjads,
Oh,
like the majority of alphabets used in the Middle East. They primarily represent consonants with vowels sometimes
Sure.
indicated by little additional marks called diacritics.
Okay.
So those systems have their origins in ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs.
Wow. Okay.
And then we have abugidas, which are common in India and Southeast Asia, where vowels are typically indicated through diacritics.